don't think I've ever seen an ad get so much backlash so quickly. But what no one's quite talking about is the actual reasons why this campaign was so poorly received, other than too woke. But what does that even mean? Honestly, it's so much deeper than that. So let's get right into it. Unless you've been living under a rock, you caught a glimpse of this new Jag ad. And I think a lot of the criticism it's been getting can be categorized under two camps. One of them is the fact that this is a heritage brand. And as such, it has a long history that helps to prompt it up. So this rejuvenizing energy that they've been pushing for is seen by many as something that's antithetical to the brand's identity and what it stands for, what makes it aspirational. Even though Jaguar is now owned by an Indian manufacturer since 2008, the brand's appeal and luxury car status largely comes from its heritage identity. Jaguar was formed in Blackpool in 1922 by William Lyons and William Walmsley. In 1935, a sports sedan was released alongside an open-top two-passenger sports car. These models, which were the Jaguar models, went on to become the recognizable luxury car company that we know today. So following the success of these Jaguar models, in 1945, the company was renamed to Jaguar Cars Limited to differentiate themselves as a memorable brand. Jaguar became known for creating exciting sports cars for international motorsports, winning the 1951 and 1953 Le Mans 24-hour race. In 1965, Jaguar Cars became part of British Motor Holdings Limited, which later merged with the Rover manufacturer Leyland Motor Corporation Limited to create the British Leyland Motor Corporation. This went on to become nationalized due to financial difficulties in 1975, but Jaguar became its own company again in 1984. Ford Motors purchased Jaguar in 1999 and then purchased Land Rover the following year. It eventually sold both to Tata Motors in 2008. Although it is owned by Tata Motors, Jaguar Land Rover is headquartered in Coventry, and at least half of their factories are located in England, with the remaining ones being in Austria, China, and India. So, this criticism of this new rebrand, particularly when it comes to changing the Jag logo, is largely rooted in the idea that by continuing to move away from that heritage identity, Jaguar is losing the part of its brand identity that makes it an aspirational luxury vehicle. This is very similar to what we've seen happen with Yves Saint Laurent when they rebranded to just Saint Laurent and dropped the Y from their logo and much of the company's hardware. This was also seen as a tricky and controversial move at the time. If you look at the new logo, to me, it's very similar to the Heritage Gucci logo, so I'm not sure if it's inspired by it or not. I'm not sure if it foreshadows a merger or an expansion of the brand into other forms of luxury, like we see with Bulgari, for example. But regardless, a lot of people are not loving it, and I have to say that changing the logo is very controversial and questionable on many levels. Firstly, the fact that they're moving away from the heritage identity of the brand. That's never an advisable idea. In the case of YSL, I do kind of understand it a little bit more in that they're trying to build a brand that's distinct from Yves Saint Laurent himself, the man, and they're trying to distinguish the brand identity and the longevity of that that brand as something that's independent from the founder, which makes sense when you consider how much the ownership has changed and continues to change over time. However, with Jaguar, it's very different because the name is not associated with a person. It actually comes from the original models that gave them the brand recognition as having that competitive edge. So moving away from that doesn't make sense just on face value. And what makes it even worse is that the company logo is an animal, which in and of itself is so well aligned with that brand. It's not a plant, it's not a friendly dog, it's a jaguar. It evokes speed, agility, it's a fast car, it's powerful, it's fierce. When you have a symbol that in and of itself already evokes all of these feelings so effortlessly, and on top of that, there's this tradition and nostalgic association with that brand for so many people, I don't understand in what parallel universe anyone would think that changing that and moving away from that was a good idea. Again, I don't hate the new logo. It's actually very pretty. Again, to me, it's reminiscent of not the new double G Gucci logo, but the heritage one that they're trying to bring back. So again, Gucci is another example of a brand that tried to modernize itself and then found that the heritage aspect of their brand was the most successful and powerful part of their appeal. So they had to go back and reintroduce their heritage logo. So Jaguar seems to be imitating that when it's not the design of the logo what makes it successful. It's the fact that that design is aligned with Gucci's history, but it's not aligned with Jaguar's history. So when they've already been moving so far away from their origins by being sold first to Ford, then to another foreign owner, for them to keep distancing themselves from those origins and that origin story is incredibly questionable and definitely understandably and predictably controversial. However, moving on to what I actually think has been the main topic of conversation, what Nigel Farage has been focusing on in his viral criticism of the new campaign, is the fact that this new ad is too woke. Now, let's stop and think for a minute. What does that really mean? If we look at the visuals and the actual imagery from this campaign, it's very clear who the target audience is.
Oh, goddamn, you're woke too?
So it does seem to be a rather woke or modern take on the brand. And it's not even necessarily just targeting youth or younger consumers, even though I do think that's a big part of the demographic they seem to be after, but not exclusively. But I don't think the problem with the campaign is that it's too woke. I think it's the fact that it's too forced. It's very evident that that's the demographic they're after. The problem is that's what the ad is about. When the ad should be about Jaguar and what they're offering, targeting that demographic. What we get instead is an ad about that demographic, which is
very bizarre.
I mean, if you think about it, we don't even see one car. And that's the problem. It feels forced and fake. And if this is, in fact, targeting Gen Z, I don't think it's exclusively targeting Gen Z, but it's very clearly aimed towards them. If there's one thing we know about Gen Z is they love authenticity and they can't stand forced messaging, especially from corporate brands. It's very clear that they are targeting this audience, which actually makes sense because Jaguar hasn't been doing that well lately. So they have to reposition themselves within the luxury car market, which is primarily extremely traditional and old-fashioned because that's the main demographic. So it kind of makes sense for them to take a page from Gucci's book.
Father, Son, and House of Gucci.
That's exactly what Gucci has done. And they were lagging behind within the luxury fashion industry, particularly going into the 2020s. So what they did was a complete rebrand, completely rejuvenized their brand, and positioned themselves as the cool, edgy, non-traditional luxury brand. And if you look at their campaigns, their ads, even their collaborations with artists like Harry Styles, Billie Eilish, even Brad Pitt, I believe.
Fun with clothes. I think fashion's supposed to be fun. So
Yeah, and that's who you are.
that's what it's all. And I think it's a good time for that right now as well. People being who they are and stuff. So.
They're very much targeting a fluid sexuality. Unlike most brands, they've defied the male and female categories in their brand to add a unisex category for clothing and accessories and leather goods. At the same time, they picked a few entry-level items and priced them for Gen Z and younger buyers who may not quite be at the stage where they can afford luxury items. And while you might think that's bad for the brand, making it a cheaper entry-level brand within the luxury world, and you would be correct, it was a very risky move, but it paid off. And you see that in sales and in how Gucci managed to bounce back. So I could see Jaguar trying to do something similar.
Everything okay?
Everything's cool, dude. I'm 30. Well, in November I'll be 30.
They were definitely lagging behind. They were not doing that great. And they figured, rightly so, the one way to differentiate themselves, distinguish themselves from the rest of more successful luxury brands, is to target a more niche and smaller share of the market. Trying to reposition themselves to capture that share of the market is where the challenge comes from. I mean, they obviously can't compete with Aston Martin or other brands. They are underperforming in heritage among the heritage luxury cars. So they're looking for a niche. This makes sense as a niche because Jaguar is all about sports and is unlike an Aston Martin that's a more established, mature luxury. That's your James Bond, mature, sophisticated luxury.
Hold that thought.
Jaguar is, a sports, sleek, young, cool luxury brand. So it does make sense for them to try to reposition themselves and dominate this smaller share of the luxury market. In this case, it also makes sense for them to try to start targeting younger buyers. So the idea was there. What they were trying to do was actually really smart and strategic for the brand. The reason it doesn't work is purely the execution. Like I mentioned before, it's too forced, too fake. So it doesn't work because it lacks authenticity. It doesn't work for the target audience, but it also managed to alienate their base customer, which is the last thing you want to do. They cannot afford to alienate their base. And the reason that happened is because they didn't base this campaign of what makes their brand aspirational, which is their heritage identity and the sports aspect of the brand. Again, even if you compare it with a lot of the Gucci ads, they do feature this alternative lifestyle, this liberated, quote unquote, woke lifestyle, but it's First of all, it actually features Gucci products. And secondly, it's not just about being diverse or different or not conforming to norms and rules and expectations. It's about a lifestyle. They are selling a lifestyle. So I love the cab ad. I think that one is super effective and very briefly conveys a story, which is, it doesn't matter your age. You could be at any age. You like to go out, you like to party or experience life. You're not going to listen to what society tells you should be doing at a certain age. You're still partying in New York, going out late, then you're a Gucci lady or a Gucci person. That's a story. That's a lifestyle that Gucci is telling you. We don't judge you, we understand you, and we are the perfect accessory for your lifestyle. Definitely come to our stores, talk to us. We get you. This is not at all what Jaguar managed to do. So that's more what they should have tried to do. Show a lifestyle. So for instance, if they wanted to do something that's about the sports brand not being just for sporty men, which is I think part of what the messaging was, they could have had a brief campaign featuring the likes of Harry Styles, former Superman actor Henry Cavill, or Elton John. He's one of the first people that came to mind because he is the embodiment of all of these qualities. He lives freely and authentically. He's always been his true self. He speaks to every generation, and he's very much young at heart. Having a woman would have also worked. Emma Watson, Dua Lipa. Dua Lipa embodies all of these pop culture aspects that they were trying to portray. Again, another example could have been someone getting out of work or getting out of a meeting and getting rid of an oppressive work suit or something like that to jump into a Jag with a range of very exotically dressed friends and drive off into the weekend, showing the different sides and lifestyles. The tagline about how you can be everything you need to be and your Jaguar supports you through every facet of life or something like that. I think with the play on color that they tried, they were clearly trying to play with color block. I think this made sense. They were introducing a car that has something to do with color.
Comes in a wide variety of colors.
With the all matte car where you can't distinguish features. It's very sleek and all very one-dimensional. That made sense. They had something like that to be introduced.
Will color be enough?
Alternatively, I think the play in color could have been really cool if they showed that being a Jag owner is being different. So they could have had a set where everything is the same color. You have people's clothing, accessories, and the background, the set, all blending together in the same color. And then one lone person stands out, and as they keep walking in the opposite direction as everyone else, they suddenly spot another person that's different. So all yellow or all red or all neon green. And then eventually all of these colorful people make it onto their Jaguar cars. That would have been using that color block diverse theme, but in a more purposeful way. Something that tells a story, something that has some added meaning that's connected to the brand, not just an ad about diversity. Honestly, I thought it kind of looked like a Dove ad because it seemed to be about people. So I think it would have made sense for cosmetics or personal hygiene, just any drugstore brand, basically. Any beauty drugstore brand would have made more sense. But that level of production fell short of a luxury brand. And it had nothing to do with cars. Specifically when compared to the over-the-top quality of ads that they've been known for in the past. This is one of those brands that you just know for their amazing ad campaigns. They're always over the top and really, really emotional. Jaguar has always been known for impeccable, unbeatable campaigns that make you feel so much pride for that brand, even if you're not in any way associated with them. Like the David Beckham one was so good, and the one with Tom Hiddleston.
It's good to be bad.
And since Daniel Craig left James Bond and who will play James Bond has been the talk of social media. It's what's been on everyone's minds. So they could have played into that. They could have had a race or a competition between all of the top fan favorites, or they could have even had Daniel Craig, in some sort of new styling similar to what we saw with Harry Styles and even Brad Pitt for that cover, when he completely reintroduced himself as this modern, liberated individual post his divorce or separation. They could have done something similar with Daniel Craig, where he takes off the James Bond tux and he has a flamboyant shirt or something, and the cheesy line about being yourself or something like that, and he gets into the Jaguar. Like when you're not acting, this is the real thing, or this is being your true self, something like that. I think that could have been
so iconic.
It would have been subtle shade at Aston Martin, but in a playful way. It could have been so cool. There was so much that they could have done, and something that all of social media would still be talking about. Jokes or references to magic or faster than magic with any of the Harry Potter cast members. There's just so much they could have done.
Like Harry Potter.
Yeah, like Harry Potter.
Now, I do also want to mention some of the positive remarks on this ad, because some people have come out to defend these choices. And I think the main concept that some people are sort of defending is the fact that at the very least, it made everyone talk, and it did make the ad go viral.
Controversy means viewers.
It does raise the question whether, all press is good press. I mean, while it did go viral, it also kind of backfired. But some people do argue that at least it's got everyone talking. The reason I don't quite agree with that is because it does have everyone talking, but no one's talking about the cars. We didn't even see the cars. It didn't even help get their product, at least subconsciously, on people's minds. But this could be a long-term strategy. I think a better strategy would have definitely been to try to appeal to this new demographic while working really hard not to alienate their core base. Anyway, I'd love to know if you've seen the ad and if you're super familiar with cars and the brand. What was your perspective? What did you think of the ad? Maybe anyone who has a different perspective? I'd love to know your thoughts.